the last trip on Interstate 95. My name is Jack, and I've been a trucker for 30 years. I've crisscrossed the United States more times than I can count, facing endless highways and lonely nights. But nothing prepared me for what happened on that ill-fated trip along Interstate 95, known for its dark history. It was a routine delivery, hauling cargo from New York to Miami. Little did I know that this trip would change my life forever and drag me into a nightmare from which I would never fully escape. The stories I'd heard over the years about missing truckers and unexplained accidents on this highway had always seemed exaggerated to me. Now I know they were just the tip of the iceberg. It all started out well enough. It was a moonless night, and darkness seemed to swallow the road ahead of me. The asphalt stretched like a black ribbon across the East Coast landscape. The radio kept static, no matter how many stations I tried to tune in. I thought it was odd, but didn't think much of it. After all, I was used to the quirks of remote American highways. I tried to turn on my phone to listen to some downloaded music, but the screen went black as if the battery had suddenly died. Driving through the night, I noticed something unusual in my rearview mirror. A dim, pulsing light seemed to be following me like a distant beacon. No matter how much I accelerated or slowed down, the light always remained the same distance. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I tried to convince myself that it was just another vehicle. No matter how hard I strained my eyes, I couldn't make out the shape of a car or truck behind this spectral light. Then things started to get really weird. The road markings seemed to be in disarray. I went from mile marker 237 to 412 in a matter of minutes. I rubbed my eyes and thought I was so tired, but the numbers kept jumping illogically. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard, expecting the hours to pass quickly, but the hands were turning counterclockwise as if time were running backwards. The interior of the truck's cabin, once a familiar refuge, began to feel hostile. The shadows in the corners seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. The steering wheel, worn from constant use, now felt cold to the touch, as if it were made of ice. The glove compartment opened by itself, revealing an old photograph that I didn't remember keeping there. In it, a group of truck drivers were smiling in front of a gas station. I recognized some faces, colleagues I hadn't seen in years. But what chilled my blood was noticing that, in the background of the photo, there was a shadowy, faceless figure watching the group. I decided to stop at the next gas station to stretch my legs and clear my mind. I saw the lights of a store ahead and felt a momentary relief. I parked the truck and got out, but something was wrong. The gas station looked abandoned for years, with rusty pumps and broken windows. But the lights were still on, flickering erratically. The air was heavy with the acrid smell of old fuel and something else. Something I couldn't identify, but that made my stomach turn. I walked into the convenience store, expecting to find someone, but the place was deserted. Dusty shelves still displayed products with decades-old expiration dates. My heart raced when I noticed, reflected in the dirty glass of the refrigerator, a shadowy figure behind me. I turned sharply, but there was no one there. But when I looked back at the reflection, the figure remained, motionless, watching me. I ran back to the truck, my only sanctuary from this nightmare. As I started the engine, the radio came to life, playing an old song I hadn't heard since I was a child. The lyrics, once innocent, now sounded like a dark warning about an endless road and an inevitable destiny. The singer's voice sounded distorted, as if it were being played backwards. I got back on the road, determined to reach my destination and put that experience behind me. But the darkness seemed thicker, swallowing the truck's headlights. And that light in the rearview mirror, it was closer now. I began to hear whispers coming from the passenger seat, indistinct voices that seemed to be telling terrible secrets. It was then that I remembered. A sudden flashback took me back 25 years, to a similar night on this same road. I was young, reckless, driving too fast. I saw the headlights of a car coming in the opposite direction, tried to swerve. I had sworn that it was just a scare, that the other vehicle had managed to escape. But now the suppressed memories came back with full force. The sound of the impact, the twisting of metal, the screams, the horrified face of a woman in the passenger seat of the other car, frozen in a silent scream. The realization hit me like a punch in the gut. That light in the rearview mirror wasn't a headlight. It was the ghostly reflection of the accident that I had buried in my memory. And now he was coming to collect his debt. The voices in the passenger seat grew louder, and I could make out words of accusation and regret. The truck began to take on a life of its own, accelerating without me touching the pedal. The steering wheel turned on its own, pulling me off the road. I tried to brake, but it was useless. We were heading toward a cliff I hadn't noticed before. The truck's dashboard began to melt, the gauges turning into screaming faces. The moment the wheels left the asphalt, everything went into slow motion. I watched my life flash before my eyes, every mile I'd driven, every choice I'd made, and then the impact. I felt metal twist around me, glass shatter. But instead of the darkness I'd expected, I was engulfed in intense light and a chorus of tormented voices. I woke up in a hospital a few days later. The doctors spoke of a miracle, of how I'd survived a fall that should have been fatal. But I knew the truth. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. The nurses looked at me with a mixture of pity and fear, as if they could see something in me that I couldn't. Since that night, I haven't been able to drive. Every time I get into a car, I hear the static on the radio. Every time I close my eyes, I see that light in the rearview mirror. And I know that one day, it will come for me to complete the journey I began so many years ago. My dreams are plagued by visions of the road, the accident, and accusing faces emerging from the darkness. Sometimes, when the night is especially dark, I find myself staring out the window, waiting to see that ghostly light. Part of me dreads that moment. Another part longs for it, because only then will I finally be able to face what I left behind on that damned road. The objects in my house seem to shift when I'm not looking, as if invisible hands are moving them. I often wake up to the smell of burning rubber and gasoline permeating the air. So if you ever find yourself driving down BR 364 on a moonless night and see a strange light in your rearview mirror, don't look back, don't slow down, and most of all, don't stop. For you may find yourself trapped on a journey from which there is no return, just as I did. If you hear a voice on the radio asking for help, ignore it. If you see a gas station shining like a beacon in the darkness, don't stop to fill up. Keep going and pray for morning. The road holds its secrets, and some of them are best left in the shadows. But for me, the shadows are now my only companion, a constant reminder of the price one pays when trying to escape the past. And as I tell this story, I feel closer than ever to completing my final journey. The walls of my room seem to pulse with an eerie energy, and I could swear I hear the distant roar of an approaching engine. Perhaps by sharing my story I can find redemption. Or perhaps I am simply drawing more souls into this eternal curse. Either way, I know my fate is sealed. The road calls to me, and I know that soon I will be back on that fateful night, reliving the horror over and over again. If you hear about a missing trucker on BR 364, know that I am not lost. I am exactly where I am supposed to be, paying for my sins on the road that never ends. And to those who have made it this far, thank you for listening to my story until the end. I hope this serves as a warning to those who dare venture into the dark secrets of this country's lonely roads. But be careful. By sharing this story, you may become part of it. The next time you are driving at night and see a strange light in your rearview mirror, remember, it could just be another car, or you may have found my next passenger. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales from the shadows, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Who knows, the next story might be about you. Until the next trip, if there is one.